In a quiet village surrounded by dusty roads and tall swaying trees, lived a young girl named Amina. Her days were simple and her heart pure. Every morning, she would wake up before sunrise to help her mother sweep their small compound before walking miles to reach her school. The village, although poor in wealth, was rich in spirit. People knew one another by name, shared their sorrows, and celebrated the little joys that life offered them. Amina was known in her village for her respectful nature and helpful hands. She would always smile, even when her shoes were worn out, or her lunch was just a handful of ground nuts. One particularly hot afternoon, as she walked home from school, her uniform clinging to her body with sweat and her books pressed to her chest, she noticed an old woman by the roadside. The woman was hunched over, struggling to lift a large container filled with water. Her arms trembled, and sweat rolled down her wrinkled face. Most people passed her by, pretending not to notice, consumed by their own exhaustion and burdens. But Amina stopped. Without thinking twice, she placed her books down under a shady tree and walked over to the old woman. "Let me help you," she said softly, reaching for the container. The woman looked up, her tired eyes widening slightly. There was a brief moment of silence before the woman nodded. Amina lifted the heavy container, her arms straining under the weight, but she did not complain. They began walking, side by side, down the narrow path that led toward the edge of the village. The old woman, whose name was Mama Wanjiru, asked her where she was coming from. Amina replied politely, explaining that she was returning from school. Mama Wanjiru nodded and said, "Education is a powerful thing, my child. Never take it for granted." Amina smiled shyly and said she wished she could continue learning, but her parents had just told her that they could no longer afford the school fees. Her father's crops had failed again this season, and her mother's small basket weaving business brought in barely enough to feed the family. Mama Wanjiru didn't say much after that, only watched the girl quietly as they continued on. When they arrived at the old woman's home, a small mud house with a tin roof and a large mango tree in the yard, Amina placed the container down gently and stepped back. "Thank you, my child," the old woman said, her voice full of sincerity. "Please wait here for a moment." Amina hesitated, unsure whether to leave or stay, but nodded and waited under the mango tree as Mama Wanjiru disappeared inside her house. Several minutes later, the old woman returned, holding a worn leather pouch. She walked over to Amina, held out the pouch with trembling hands and said, "Take this. It's not a gift, it's an investment." Amina opened the pouch and was shocked to find money inside enough to cover her school fees for the entire year. Her eyes filled with tears, and she tried to refuse, but the old woman gently placed the pouch back into her hands and said, "Sometimes the people we help are the ones sent to change our lives." Amina walked home that day, not just with lighter feet, but with a heart filled with hope. She told her parents what had happened. At first, they were confused, then overwhelmed with gratitude. Her father went to thank Mama Wanjiru personally the next day. What they didn't know, what the whole village didn't know, was that Mama Wanjiru had once been a teacher, a headmistress in a school far from the village. She had retired years ago and chosen to live a quiet life, away from the noise of the city. She had no children of her own, but she had saved money from her pension with one quiet goal: to help at least one child who reminded her of why she had chosen to teach in the first place. Amina continued her studies with new motivation. Her teachers noticed the spark in her eyes and the determination in her step. She studied day and night, always remembering the day she carried water, not just for an old woman, but unknowingly for her own future. She excelled in her exams and won a scholarship that took her to the city for higher education. But she never forgot Mama Wanjiru. She would write letters, visit during school breaks, and sometimes just sit and listen to the old stories the woman shared. Years passed. Amina became a doctor, not just in title but in spirit. She returned to the same village that had shaped her and set up a small clinic. People came from nearby areas, not just because the treatment was good, but because it was given with compassion. She treated children with smiles, comforted mothers with tired eyes, and spoke to elders with the same respect she had shown as a girl. One day, an old patient asked her what had made her want to become a doctor. Amina smiled and said, "It all started with a container of water." She often told the story to children who came to the clinic, hoping they too would learn that kindness was never wasted. She never sought recognition, never chased after fame. But people knew. They remembered. The village grew proud of her, not because she left and made a name, but because she came back and gave more. When Mama Wanjiru passed away, Amina was there, holding her hand. She buried her under the mango tree where they had first spoken. And under that same tree, she built a small library filled with books with a plaque that read, "In honor of Mama Wanjiru, whose wisdom flowed like water, and whose kindness gave life to a dream." And so, the story of a girl who helped carry water continued to flow through generations, a quiet reminder that sometimes when you carry someone else's burden, you lift your own destiny.